Hey everybody, I'm really excited about this video because I finally got me a pair of copper rough and toughs, and they've been on my wish list forever, and now I'm going to take and recraft them for you guys and rebuild them. And the cool part is the sole that I'm going to use is the Dr. Sole Tumaz sole, and that way you get to learn about this sole and find out what my opinion is of it as I'm working with it, how it sands out, how it feels, the durability aspects, and the whole 9 yards. So stick along. So as you notice, I'm starting at the back of the heel instead of at the front of the heel, like we've talked about in some of our other videos, that it's better because when you pull this way, you don't pull on the upper of the boot and stretch this down. You actually keep everything intact, because the pressure of pulling that heel off can actually straighten your shank out and make the boot miss shape as well, crease in places. So now this is a new boot, and some people criticize us because we do new boots, and they're like, oh man, that's a waste of money and whatnot. But I bought this new boot with the exact purpose of creating the boot that I want it to be. And the factory soles are not what I wanted it to be. Now, as I've mentioned in other videos as well, this being a new boot, there hasn't been any weather that has made it easier for me to get a knife in between the sole and the welt to cut the stitches. And because Red Wing uses a nylon stitch, I'm just going to sand the tops off of these stitches, and then I can pull them all out at one go. One thing I have learned from talking to a lot of customers, either via online or in phone conversations on for our mail-in customers and stuff like that, is that people who customize their boots nowadays are very, very similar to people who customize their cars and their trucks. Customizing your car and your truck has been a trend for ages. I mean, I remember my dad talking about doing it when he was a teenager. And if he were alive, he'd be around about 85 years old now. People have realized that they can buy a boot that isn't necessarily what they want, just like their cars. You know, they buy a car, it's not exactly what they want, it's just the closest thing that the manufacturers make out there, and then they take and start shopping for accessories for that automobile right away. And you know, they'll put new rims and tires on a brand new car when the factory tires were, you know, brand new. They maybe had 10 or 15 miles on them, but it's not what they wanted. So they'll do that, and over time in society that has become acceptable behavior, and now people are doing that to their boots. And there are other people out there going, how could you do that to a boot? Why didn't you buy so-and-so's boot? Why didn't you buy this boot or that boot with the money you spent? Well, this boot or that boot isn't what they want, just like the car. You could always buy a more expensive car, but that doesn't mean that you're going to get the car that looks, drives, and acts exactly the way you have it envisioned. And so people like to do customizations, and that's what we do. And that's exactly what I wanted to do to these boots. The day that I first saw them, I knew that I was going to modify them to look my way. I just didn't know what sole. And I've had these sitting in the closet for a little while, just waiting, going, what am I going to do to these boots? And I saw the Tumaz sole come out, and I was like, there you go. I want to do that because that'll be different than the V100s like I currently have on my boots now. That way I get to compare them side by side on my own feet and pass on that experience to you guys that I have with the difference in these soles. But also, I don't expect the Tumaz to behave or wear or act just like the V100. Otherwise, I would have just stuck with the classic V100. I expect something new out of this. I'm really not a fan of manufacturers' new way of holding shanks in place with hot glue. It creates all kinds of problems. Some good salesman went around selling hot glue to all these manufacturers, and they started using it, thinking it was a quicker, better way, but it creates squeaks more often. So I know they have a complaint department about it, and I don't know if they've looked at it and go, hey, you know, we didn't have squeaks when we didn't use hot glue. And repairmen keep saying this hot glue is where the squeaks come from. Got my cork cleaned out. Now it's time to take the welt off. You know, it's really funny. When I was taught how to fix shoes, I was taught that you take a knife and you cut in between the welt and the stitches. You cut every stitch and you pull it, and you sit there and you cut every one of them, and you go around and cut them all, and then when you're done, you take a pick like this and you pick each and every one of those stitches out. And then one day I was talking to Tobias as he was working on something. I was visiting his shop, and he pulled a welt off like this and did this, just pulling these stitches out all at one time like this. And you talk about a jaw drop moment for me. I was like, what the? No way. He said, what are you talking about? And I said something about it. He goes, oh yeah, I learned that on one of our Facebook groups where a bunch of shoe repairmen get together and talk about different tricks and things like that. He said, when I saw that, I was like, yep. He said, I had the same reaction you did. So this became our new method, standard method of removal, real quick. So I got the welts off, and I got them dyed, and I dyed my welts the way I want to. I marked them and got them dyed the way I want them. And if you'll notice, what I did here is I did a section in a brown, and then I went natural on each end, and you'll see the results of that later on. And I think you're really going to like what I came up with there. Okay, so as I mentioned before, I got a dark area and a light area, and I want my areas to come out where I want them on the boot. So instead of just starting at one end and going around, I want to line this up with the lines that I marked on my boot, so that I know that I got this dark area exactly where I want it, and then I've got excess on each side that I can cut off later. So that's what I'm going to do. The official measuring device for the proper length thread or sewing on a welt is 2 arm stretches all the way out. Never mind if your arms are longer or shorter than mine. that was what I was officially told when I first started welting. It's 2 arm stretches out. Some people's arms are longer than others. First stitch is always the most cumbersome one, because nothing is holding anything in place for you. As I've mentioned in some of my other videos, this is the part where you want to be real careful about raising your welt up before you pull your stitch tight. That helps keep it from pinching the welt down like this. It'll actually turn it. You'll get a better seal around this area, and you'll have less trouble flipping the welt down to match up with your midsole or sole. Another thing you have to be really careful about doing is it's very, very rigid here. This will flex a little more than this. So you see how my needle is coming down and it's wanting to dig into the inner sole. And if I tilt it too soon, I can break the tip off of my needle because the barb is so thin right there, you can just break it. So you got to wait till you get that barb past before you leverage down so you can slide it on past everything. And what that causes that is sometimes whoever's running the welting machine at a manufacturer, you know, that thing's flying, and they can just slightly dip the shoe a little bit. It'll still put it in place because they've got excess to cut off and stuff like that, but see, that thing's right at the bottom right there. So if I tried to straighten it up here and put that pressure, if I had my needle turned just right, I'd just pop that end off and there goes the needle. So I pull that through. That last stitch I pull through, I do a loop cinch and then a double loop cinch. Leave a little whip for cement to catch. And now I need to cut this off. There we go. Now I've got to bevel this and this side after I put my shank in and get my cork right and everything. Always hammer this down. Because remember, you pulled all that stuff up, you need to turn it back over. So let me get that back down. I got ahead of myself. I cemented this, but I haven't beveled these yet, so it won't hurt anything. I'm gonna go over and bevel these, and so they'll match up with my heel ram. So I want to put a little cement right here. all the way across there, right there, so I can blend my heel rand in, and then I'm going to do a little bit back here just to kind of tack it in place until I get my nail in it. And my heel rand, I've already beveled it and dyed it. I wanted to match the front half or give it a close to that look. But I want that bevel to bond real well, and that way I don't get a click or anything there. And I slightly roughed that up just to right in the middle, just so it can hold it in place until I get my tacks in it. Now I went with a thick leather midsole because I weigh between 185 and 225 pounds, and I want that added support that the thick leather midsole will give me, especially on this boot because I'll probably end up wearing it hiking and things like that, and I definitely want the extra support. I want to place this. Obviously this sole is too big for this boot because it's a smaller size boot, but I want to make sure that I've got enough room that when I fold my welts over that I'm not going to be off one side or the other and get it stuck. So that's why I lay it that way. Press down the middle, roll it out, as we have talked about in other videos. Hammer down the middle, and then work your way out on each side. like to go around twice, especially on a wide welt, because the welt press will get up tight to the boot the first go around, and then I bring it out to the outer edge and get the outer edge the second go around. Now you'll notice I made a couple of ink marks. Since this is a midsole, I'm not worried about the ink being on there. But this is going to be my starting points because I want my stitches to line up at the right spot where I've done my colored heel rand and my colored welt. Okay, I got my first row all the way around 270. Now it's time to do this row. I've got to set up my machine for the right stitch length. So what I want is this right here is what gives you your depth. See, the needle and all come up through here, and that shows you how far you're going away from that, so that how deep you'll be in on the sole. So for a second row, I want it to be about right here. And so this one has a little set screw right there that I can run that in, and now that's got that set right there, and that gives me my depth for the other. So I want to double check it though. So what I want to do is I want to set this on here, roll my needle and all up through, lock that back up. And see, that's a little closer to my stitch than my original stitch than I want it. So I'm gonna bring a little bit more right there. Now that'll give me a little bit space, because I did a really wide welt. So I don't want my stitches right on top of each other. If you do a narrower welt, then you want it on top of each other. And but that's the way I wanted this one designed. Okay, stitch line to line. Now I want to pull these through so I get me some little whips that I can glue down. Okay, I got my stitching in the channels. So that way when I do a next resole, I don't have to worry about hitting my stitching and everything. I left some little whips sticking up so I can glue that over, and I don't have to worry about my stitches coming and backing out the other side. Now I need to nail the heel rand down. Checking all my nails, checking the inside to make sure they curled up and won't stick through into my foot. So they're all good. So now it's time to put the sole on. But before I put cement on this and can't do a comparison, I did want to show you guys a comparison of the V100 versus the Tumaz. If you notice, there is very little, if any, difference in the thickness of the sole and the tread. So the depth of the tread is pretty much the same, and the depth of the sole. So you have about the same amount of wear surface. And these are similar in thickness as well. The Tumaz looks like it's a little bit thicker, but it's negligible. So you're not going to see a lot of difference in wear between that. And then the heel, again, the depth between here and the outer tread, if we line those up, maybe the thickness of a business card I can feel bumping above there. But the Tumaz is a little bit thicker overall in the back, which is irrelevant for our type of purposes because we use heel bases, so we end up grinding this part away so we can get the rubber part height the way we want it, because as you know, I don't like to wear my heels off too terribly far, because that starts tilting your ankle and causing you all kinds of joint problems all the way up the body. So everything else seems to compare. The front is identical in thickness, whereas the back is a little bit thicker. So they did a little bit of a taper on theirs, probably because they did a little higher in the back. So one of the reasons that I'm really excited about trying out this Tumaz is because we've been very happy with the results of all of our Dr. Sole products that we've gotten in. We get a lot of feedback from our customers that, you know, they're happy with them, the durability, the grip, the winter wear, different things like that, compared to other soles that they have used. And they'll let us know. So, you know, when we saw this lug sole come out by them, we weren't like, oh great, something to replace the V100 by any stretch of the imagination, because it's an awesome sole. However, it does give a little bit of a style difference, and I really like the cool little bar right here. And apparently there's a bear that has that on his chest, and that's what this is named after and designed after, is that bear with that little bar in their chest. So you can Google that and see what I'm talking about there. So it just made me curious, with their lug sole, are they using the same compound as all their other soles? And so is the grip going to be the same? Is the durability going to be the same, just a different tread pattern? Or have they come out with a different compound altogether? And we're going to get a whole other experience out of this. So as soon as I saw it, I was like, okay, that gives me something else to try for my customers and offer to them. And they weren't available in the United States. And then eventually our supplier was able to get them in and get them imported to the United States. So this is a new offering, and a lot of people don't know that it's available in the US yet. So that was one reason why I wanted to do this video, is to make you guys aware that it's available sole. Now these have to sit overnight, or 3 hours or so. It's going to be overnight on this particular case, before we can trim everything out. But I can go ahead and cut the back part off, because it's not going to be under a stress without anything holding it, because we're going to put the heel bases over it, and that'll pinch everything together and help keep that from having any delamination problems. or anything like that. So I'm just going to trim this little bit here off with the knife so I can get my heel bases in place and go ahead and attach those. That way the heels and the soles can all sit overnight. I'm doing a logger shape heel on this one. So I want to bring this heel forward so that I have some excess back here for getting the scoop curve in. So made my mark, now I've got to rough that up. And I'm doing a single layer GM leather base. So I've got it roughed up and ready to go. And so now all I got to do is rough this up and cement these, get them stuck, nail everything together, and then we're ready to put the heels on. One of the things I've noticed so far about the difference in these and the V100s is the rubber compound is definitely different, and this is a little bit softer than the black V100. I have a regular customer who has done several types of boots and tried to get every sole we have to offer on his boots. So he communicates with me regularly about everything, and he tests them out and lets me know what's what, just so we know and can offer you guys proper feedback. And he said that not to compare this to the black V100, but as far as wearing in the cushion side of things, and also I've noticed from the durability of sanding the, because I sanded up the rubber heels and roughed up the soles, feels more like the Honey 100, which is a little bit softer compound. And he said that this has that shock absorbing feeling like the Honey 100 as well. So that might help you with your decision on, whether you want to try this or not. So that's what happens when one of those things bends over and you hit it 2 or 3 times before you stop your rhythm. Okay, now I'll go in here and make sure everything clenched up good. It did. And since I'm not putting any more nails all the way through the boot, I'll go ahead, put my heel pad in while it's on my mind so I don't forget it. And also, when I hammer my rubber heel on and nail it, that'll help putting more pounding on this so it'll stick in better. All right, now it's just a matter of putting the heel on, and then we gotta wait till tomorrow. When using the heat box, and I don't want to reactivate the cement in this, is I lay a shirt over it so it'll insulate it and keep me from heating that back up while I'm trying to heat the heel. One thing I'm curious about, I'm putting a nail in here to find out, is do these holes have washers, or are they just holes? And look, they have washers, so it does have washers in the heels. I didn't fill in when I was sanding it, so I got a little concerned that they weren't there. But they're there, so that's cool. All right, that's got that. Now it's time to let this puppy sit overnight, and then we'll come back and finish them out tomorrow. Now, one thing I did on this particular pair, as I mentioned before, is I used GM leather midsoles instead of our house leather, which is a veggie tan. And so when you see our pictures and different things online, wondering why one looks different than the other, a lot of times it has to do with the leather usage that we did choose, because these are oak bark tanned versus the veggie tan, so it gives you a lot darker stain. This is just a neutral polish, cream polish that I'm putting on here. It gives it a nice coating, seals the leather, and gives it a good shine. But as you can tell, this is a lot darker layers than a lot of ours that you see where we're doing a natural. This is called our natural edge. It's a lot darker layers than what you see when we do a natural edge on house leather. So if you're wanting that darker look without putting an actual dye or stain to it, then that's the way to go, is to upgrade to the GM leather, and or even the JR leather if you want to go that high. But those two give you that dark edge with just a natural finish. So it's real easy to take care of these, because all you got to do is have a neutral polish and apply it from time to time to reseal them after you've had them out in water and everything. All right, so now we have the finished product here. I'm really happy with the way these came out, and it's a good thing because these are mine, so I have to put up with living with them. But yeah, so just to recap, you know, we used the Tumaz sole from Dr. Sole, and we're going to give that a good testing, and I'll let you guys know later about how long it lasts and what I think of the grip and all of those things, even though I've talked about some of my testimonials from some of my customers who are already testing them out for me. So yeah, we did the thick leather GM midsoles because I like a good stability midsole underneath me, and at my weight, the thick matches my weight really good. And I did GM leather bases so that I got a good match with the edging and everything, since I knew I was going to do the natural edge. I did rust stitching as mentioned before because I really like the way the rust stitching goes up next to this copper rough and tough. And I did a double row. I did a 3/4 row around the inside row, and then I just did a half row around the outside edge. And then as you notice, I've got it natural in here in the waist area, and I dyed the outer edge so that it gave me a dark contrast to show the stitching better. And then on this one I did something a little special for myself. I took and dyed the heel rand as well so that I have a contrast on the heel rand area as well. So I really like the way these came out, and I hope you enjoyed.